Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine that feeling, the frustration when a brilliant idea just gets lost somewhere.
Or yeah, a critical instruction is completely misunderstood.
Exactly. Or maybe your team just feels, well, totally out of sync. So much of our professional lives, really, it boils down to communication.
It really does.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into that whole complex, fundamental process. You've given us a really fascinating stack of material here. These are excerpts from Mastering Organizational Communication, Principles, Processes, and Practices.
hmm
And our mission is basically to unpack these sources, pull out the core insights, so you get a kind of shortcut to understanding what makes communication tick.
Or not tick.
Or completely unravel, inside any organization. And honestly, this material, it goes way beyond just the basics. There's some surprising depth here.
There really is. I mean, the readings kick off with this powerful idea.
Mm,
Communication isn't just something we do. It's a crucial internal dynamic
right.
and a strong determinant of productivity.
Mm.
It's fascinating, actually, to look back at how management thinkers saw this. Early classical theories, they almost ignored it, just focused on structure, tasks,
Just tell people what to do, basically.
pretty much. But then you get the human relations folks, the behavioral pioneers like Elton Mayo, from the Hawthorne studies, Chester Barnard.
Right.
They started seeing that, hang on, human interaction, the social stuff, communication played this vital role in how organizations actually ran, how people behaved.
And then, of course, technology just changed everything again.
Oh, absolutely. The explosion of ICT information and communication technology that's completely transformed practices,
Yeah.
added speed, reach, but also, new layers of complexity we're honestly still figuring out.
So why does this evolution matter to you listening? Well, because whether you're leading a team, contributing to one, or maybe just trying to figure out why things happen the way they do where you work, communication is, like your source material nicely puts it, the lubricant.
That's a great word for it.
It really is. It keeps the machinery running smoothly. Without that lubricant, you just get, well, grinding gears and friction.
And that friction, so often, it stems from just not getting what effective communication really is.
Yeah.
The readings really stress it's not just about sending something.
Not just transmission.
No, it absolutely requires understanding. It's defined as the interaction between two or more persons actively exchanging info, ideas, views, perspectives.
I really like those definitions the source pulled out, like Millett calling it a shared understanding of a shared purpose.
Yeah, that's powerful. And Ted's one, a meeting of minds on common issues.
Yeah.
Both get at that core idea of alignment, right? Being on the same page.
That's the key takeaway here, isn't it? For communication to really work, the sender's intent has to line up pretty closely with the receiver's interpretation.
Exactly. And that gap, that potential mismatch, oh, that's where so many problems start in organizations.
So how do we visualize that? The material brings in the Shannon-Weaver model.
Right. It's often seen as a bit linear, maybe,
Yeah.
but it's still super helpful for showing the process and, crucially, where things can potentially go wrong.
Okay, let's walk through that process then, based on the source.
So it starts with the source or the sender. That's the person, maybe a group, who has an idea, some information they want to share. And they've got a reason, a purpose for sharing
Plus
it.
got the thought.
Got the thought.
Yeah.
Then comes encoding. They had to figure out how to express that thought, turn it into symbols.
Like words. Or
Words, yeah, specific language, gestures, maybe visuals, data points, anything the receiver can potentially make sense of,
And the result of that encoding, that's the message, the actual stuff being sent.
which travels through a channel. The medium.
Yeah.
Is it spoken, written, email, video, a look?
Uh-huh.
And this stage is critical because, as the material points out, noisy can mess things up right here in the channel itself.
Okay, so the message goes through the channel to the receiver, the intended audience.
And the receiver, they have to decode it, make sense of those symbols. That's decoding. They interpret it. But, and this is key, their interpretation is shaped heavily by their own background, their experiences, the whole context.
And noise can hit here, too.
Absolutely. Noise can distort the decoding just as much, so the message might arrive,
Yeah.
but it gets interpreted totally differently than the sender meant. Yeah. And the final piece, closing the loop, is feedback. The receiver's response. It signals, okay, I got it, or wait, what? Or maybe just confirms receipt. But the source notes, even that feedback itself can carry noise.
And this noise the material talks about, it's not just like construction noise outside the window, is it?
No, that's a really key insight.
Yeah.
Noise is any interference. Could be physical, sure, but also semantic, like jargon nobody understands.
Mm-hmm.
Or psychological bias, emotions getting in the way. It can disrupt the message at any stage, which is why the factors affecting effectiveness include things like clarity of the language used, the shared knowledge and background or lack thereof between sender and receiver, picking the right channel suitability. Uh, don't try to explain complex data purely verbally.
Bad idea.
Terrible idea. The presence of noise, those cultural and contextual differences, and of course, the quality feedback. Is it timely? Is it helpful?
The example you mentioned, the project manager email, really makes this concrete.
It really does. You've got the sender manager encoding the update into clear language, hopefully, message, sending it via email, channel, team members, receiver, read and decode it, feedback, many questions they email back.
But noise could be.
All sorts. Maybe the manager uses acronyms. Only half the team knows that semantic noise. Maybe some team members read it on their phones in a busy airport, physical noise. Maybe there's past tension, so they read negativity into neutral statements, psychological noise. It just shows how many points of failure there are.
Okay, so that's the process. But beyond that, the sources dig into the actual types of communication we see day to day, breaking it down by method, direction, and formality.
Right, so by method, first you've got oral communication, talking, face-to-face meetings, phone calls, presentations. Big advantage. It's fast, you get immediate feedback.
The downside?
Things can get distorted easily as they're passed along, like the telephone game. And often there's no record. A quick team huddle is a classic example.
Then written. Reports, emails, memos, policies. The opposite in some ways. Pro. Permanent record. Can be very clear if done well. Con. It's slower, feedback is delayed, and it can feel impersonal. Think of a formal policy document.
Then there's nonverbal. This is huge and often unconscious. Body language, tone of voice, facial expressions.
Eye contact, or lack thereof.
Exactly. It conveys emotion, it can reinforce your words or completely contradict them. But it's also super easy to misinterpret without context. Your boss says, "I'm fine," but their arms are crossed, they're frowning.
You know they're not fine.
You know they're not fine. That nonverbal speaks volumes.
And the big one now, computer-aided or ICT. Email, Slack, Teams, Zoom.
All of it. Benefit. Instant broad reach, overcomes distance. Drawbacks. Can be really impersonal. And the source rightly flags the massive risk of information overload. We're all drowning in it sometimes. A remote team using Slack and Zoom lives and breathes this method.
Okay, switching gears to bidirection. You have downward communication.
Yep, superiors to subordinates. Instructions, guidance, policies, goals. Cascading down?
The risks.
Oh, plenty. Filtering is a big one. Information gets lost or changed as it goes down the chain. Delays. Simple misinterpretation. Think of the CEO announcing a new strategy. How does that actually land 5 levels down?
Then upward. Subordinates to superiors.
Crucial. This is how feedback gets up. Progress reports, suggestions, warnings about problems.
But often tricky.
Very. There's often fear of reprisal. People are reluctant to share bad news. Maybe managers filter things to look better. An employee feedback survey or an old-school suggestion box are ways to try and formalize this. But the barriers are real.
Lateral or horizontal. This is peer-to-peer.
Exactly. Colleagues in the same level, maybe in different departments. It's essential for coordination, for solving problems that cross functional lines.
Potential issues.
Departmental silos, turf battles, maybe just not knowing what other teams are doing, leading to misalignment. A marketing manager talking to a product manager about a launch, that's classic lateral communication.
And finally, diagonal.
This cuts across levels and functions. Like, say, a junior person in finance talking directly to a VP in operations.
Why would that happen?
It can really speed things up, expedite decisions or collaboration when needed. But the source warns you have to be careful it doesn't bypass formal authority in disruptive ways. A research scientist emailing the CEO directly with a breakthrough that's diagonal, potentially high impact, but needs handling. And the last breakdown is formal versus informal.
Right. Formal communication follows the official pathway.
Exactly. Official channels, the org chart. Think official memos, reports going up the chain, board minutes. The strength is clarity, structure, accountability. There's usually a record.
The weakness.
It can be rigid, slow, and sometimes it actually inhibits real dialogue because it feels too stiff.
And informal is everything else.
Pretty much. The water cooler chat, hallway conversations, lunches, the unofficial networks, and the famous grapevine.
Ah, the grapevine.
Its big advantage is speed. Information and misinformation can fly through the grapevine incredibly fast. It also often reveals the real mood, the underlying culture.
The huge downside, though.
Rumors, misinformation, Lack of accountability. You hear something through the grapevine, but is it true? Who said it? Hard to tell.
So the source contrasts these. Formal is slower, documented, usually more accurate, official channels. Informal is rapid, variable accuracy, unofficial, often no record.
Right. Think of a formal annual performance review, very structured, versus a manager just having coffee with a team member and finding out about serious morale issues that would never come up in the formal review. You really need both pictures.
Okay, we've got the process, the types. Let's get back to the why. Why does getting this right matter so much? The source material really digs into the significance.
It does. It calls communication the absolute foundation. Quotes Peter Drucker saying it determines the foundation of an organization. It shapes the structure, enables coordination, builds the culture itself.
It's how organizations manage goals, right?
Yeah,
Setting them, executing plans, monitoring how things are going, giving feedback.
absolutely. And remember Chester Barnard. He argued communication is essential for cooperative social action. You need a common purpose, people willing to contribute, but none of that happens without communication binding it together.
Herbert Simon's angle was decision-making support. Communication transmits the info, the assumptions, the decisional premises that people use to make choices.
And back to that lubricant idea, it's fundamental for productivity and efficiency. Good communication reduces friction, improves relationships, aligns effort. Bad communication just grinds everything to a halt.
There's also a human element, isn't there? An outlet for needs.
Yeah, the source calls it a sigh of relief, fulfilling that basic human need for social interaction. That's where informal chat is so important for well-being. And that informal chat, the grapevine, it reveals the organizational reality, what people are really thinking and feeling, often missed by formal surveys.
The material also touches on public administration and governance.
Critically important there. For citizen dialogue, transparency, countering misinformation, which is a huge issue now, building trust between the government and the people it serves. It's vital.
The examples given are really stark, like hospital protocols where crystal clear communication literally prevents life-threatening errors.
Exactly. Or think of public health during a crisis. They use formal channels like press briefings, but they also have to monitor informal channels like social media to understand public sentiment and combat rumors effectively.
So understanding this stuff isn't just theoretical. It directly impacts effectiveness, morale, results, wherever you are.
Definitely. And understanding how we came to understand this is interesting too. The source touches on those key thinkers. We mentioned Barnard and Simon.
Communication as essential for leaders, for decisions.
Right. Elton Mayo's Hawthorne work highlighting supervisor-employee dialogue, the social side.
Mary Follett talking about horizontal communication, peers talking, and that idea of depersonalizing orders, focusing on the situation, not just authority.
Ondrej Fayol gave us the scalar chain, the formal hierarchy, but also recognized the need for shortcuts, the gangplank, for efficiency.
Drucker linking motivation and communication, seeing the impact of the information revolution early on.
Yeah, and even earlier figures like Taylor, with his very top-down view, or Weber, emphasizing formal records, they all contributed pieces. Then you have Likert pushing for two-way communication, McGregor's theory why, assuming people want open channels. It all builds.
So these thinkers laid the groundwork. But let's get real. Even with all this understanding, communication often breaks down. It feels like navigating a minefield sometimes. The sources have a whole section on barriers.
Oh yeah, this is where sender intent and receiver interpretation really drift apart. And the list of barriers is pretty long because there are just so many ways for it to go wrong.
Like what? What are some big ones?
Language differences or jargon is huge. Technical terms only one group understands, like the example of the IT team baffling the marketing department with tech speak.
Ideological and cultural barriers, people seeing the same thing completely differently because of their backgrounds. Think of a global team trying to collaborate.
Emotional reactions, anger, defensiveness, fear. These can just completely block a message. The example of harsh criticism making someone shut down entirely.
Inadequate communication, just not giving enough info, like that partial project update that just leaves everyone confused and asking more questions.
Ambiguity. Double-meaning words, saying something will be done soon. But what does soon mean?
Could be hours, could be weeks.
Exactly. Stereotyping too. Preconceived ideas about the sender or receiver that color everything. A dismissive manager might ignore a great idea just because of who suggested it.
What about distance?
Long distance and delay. Physical separation, time zones making real-time chat hard, delays in getting information. A crucial letter from a field office arriving too late to be useful.
And too much process.
Yes, rigidity of formal communication. when following the rules becomes more important than clear or timely communication. That classic bureaucratic nightmare, paperwork delaying a simple decision.
Source authenticity is a big one now, with misinformation.
Huge. Doubting the credibility of the source or just dealing with outright fake news or rumors spreading like wildfire,
Yeah.
people don't know who or what to trust.
And the digital pitfalls.
Lack of emotional context, especially in email or text. You miss the tone, the facial expression. It's so easy to misinterpret the tone of an email.
Oh.
Was that comment sarcastic? Serious? Who
And
knows?
status differences play a role too, right?
Absolutely. Power dynamics, subordinates being afraid to speak up, challenge superiors, or deliver bad news. That fear of reporting bad news up the chain is a classic barrier.
And just plain old physical noise.
Yep. Literal background noise making it hard to hear, like in a virtual meeting with kids or pets in the background, or a bad connection.
Wow. Okay, that is a comprehensive minefield. The impacts listed: misinterpretation, confusion, distortion, defensiveness, delay, distrust. It paints a pretty bleak picture if things go wrong.
It can be bleak, but the good news is the material doesn't just leave us there. It gives really concrete strategies for overcoming barriers, building bridges across that minefield.
Okay, good. What are some of the key strategies? What can people actually do?
Probably the absolute core one is use feedback loops. Don't just send in hope. Actively ask questions, solicit feedback, maybe ask the receiver to paraphrase what they understood. It's the best way to ensure the message actually landed as intended, like the manager asking a team member to repeat instructions back.
Makes total sense. Check for understanding.
Exactly. And related to that jargon barrier, use clear, simple language. Avoid acronyms and technical terms if your audience won't know them or explain them clearly. It just reduces ambiguity. Think about creating a plain language summary of a complex report.
What about the emotional side, those reactions?
You have to address emotional reactions. You can't ignore them. Acknowledge feelings, listen with empathy. It helps reduce defensiveness and builds trust. If someone's upset by feedback, have that calm one-on-one discussion to understand why.
Building trust in the source seems vital too. Sender credibility.
Massively important. Be transparent. Explain the why. Show you care. People are way more likely to listen and accept information, even difficult information, if they trust the person delivering it. A leader sharing the data and rationale behind a tough choice builds that credibility.
The source also suggests utilizing multiple channels. Why is that helpful?
Because people absorb information differently, and repetition helps. Plus, different channels suit different messages. So maybe you announce a new policy via email, then discuss the why in a town hall, and answer quick questions in team chats. It reaches more people and reinforces the message.
And tackling that misinformation, fake news barrier.
Ensure adequate and authentic info. Do your homework. Verify facts before you communicate. And if misinformation is out there, correct it quickly and transparently. This is absolutely critical for building trust and stopping rumors. The public admin example of issuing factual updates during a crisis is key.
Okay, and reducing hierarchy. That seems counterintuitive sometimes.
It can feel that way, but reducing hierarchy and filtering for communication purposes helps. Encouraging more direct contact, maybe through flatter structures or open channels, means faster information flow and fewer layers where messages can get distorted. An open door policy, or using chat tools for direct questions, can achieve this.
And for the really tough conversations.
Prioritize face-to-face, or at least video where you can see each other. So much is communicated non-verbally. It allows for that immediate clarification and reading of emotional cues that text just misses. Giving performance feedback. Almost always better in person or live video.
Tailoring to the receiver. Sounds basic, but probably gets missed a lot.
It does. You have to adapt your language, your examples, the medium, based on who you're talking to. You wouldn't run technical training the same way for engineers as you would for the sales team, right? Adapting enhances comprehension.
And actually teaching these skills.
Yes. Provide training. Communication isn't just innate. Workshops on listening, writing clearly, giving constructive feedback, cross-cultural communication. These things build shared skills and understanding. Simple things like emails or meeting etiquette training can make a difference.
How does ICT fit into solving these problems?
It's about leveraging ICT tools smartly. Use the right tool for the job. Video conferencing for nuanced discussions, collaboration platforms for project transparency, instant messaging for quick updates. Using the right tool helps overcome distance while hopefully preserving some context.
And interestingly, those informal networks, the grapevine, which can be a barrier, can also be part of the solution.
Exactly. Establish or encourage informal networks. Facilitate ways for people to connect socially, build relationships, even virtual coffee chats. These supplement formal channels, build trust, and often surface those ground realities you'd otherwise miss. It's about harnessing it, not just fearing it.
That's a really practical set of strategies from the source material. And speaking of ICT, the sources really drive home how the ICT revolution has just fundamentally reshaped this whole landscape.
Oh, it's been completely revolutionary. Look at the benefits of the material lists. Reduced delay in inadequacy info flies instantly. It even suggests ICT helps eliminate noise through digital clarity. Though, ironically, we now have new kinds of digital noise like notification overload.
Right, but it definitely overcomes time, distance, and space. Global teams, remote work, that's all possible because of ICT.
It's also helped reduce hierarchy and filtering, at least potentially, by allowing more direct communication channels, bypassing traditional gatekeepers.
We have access to just increased info volume and accessibility internets, shared drives, big data.
It's enabled powerful knowledge management systems, capturing and sharing organizational memory.
Enhanced feedback tools, online surveys, instant polls, analytics, dashboards give quick reads.
Huge support for decision-making through faster data sharing and analysis.
And a massive impact in the public sector, right? E-governance, using social media officially, online consultations.
Yeah, the example of a global project team using Slack, Zoom, and something like Confluence to work together across continents is perfect. Or e-government putting draft laws online for anyone to comment on. Unthinkable not long ago.
But it's not all smooth sailing. The source is clear about the challenges, too.
Definitely not a magic bullet. Information overload is probably the biggest one we all feel. Just drowning in emails, messages, data.
The lack of emotional nuance in text is still a huge issue. Trying to figure out tone in an email or chat message?
It's tough. Then there's the digital divide. Not everyone has equal access or skills with these tools.
Constant worries about security and privacy with all this data flying around.
And a really interesting one, maintaining trust remotely. How do you build that deep identification-based trust when you rarely, if ever, meet face-to-face? It requires a different approach.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive has covered a huge amount of territory. From why communication is so fundamental, through the process, the different types and directions, the thinkers who shaped our ideas, all those barriers.
And the strategies to overcome them, plus the massive impact of technology. It really shows that good organizational communication isn't accidental. It's a complex system that needs deliberate effort and skill.
And this source material gives a really solid map for navigating that system. So, just to wrap up, let's quickly hit some of the key best practices that emerge from the readings as practical takeaways for you listening.
Yeah, boiled down, it's things like focus on clarity and simplicity. Use a multi-channel approach. Definitely build in active feedback loops. Tailor your messages. Actively work to overcome barriers. Use empathy. Provide training. Leverage ICT smartly, but guard against the overload.
Don't forget promoting informal networks constructively. Leaders need to ensure credibility. Be ready to shorten channels when speed matters. Document important messages. Encourage cross-functional dialogue. Pay attention to the organizational climate, both formal and informal signals. Keep investing in communication skills training. Make sure communication is part of decision-making, not an afterthought. And always, always maintain ethical and transparent practices.
That's a great summary. It really covers the essentials for making communication work better.
Understanding these dynamics really gives you a powerful lens for looking at and maybe improving communication wherever you work. It helps you see the potential pitfalls and know how to build those bridges.
Exactly. It's about being more intentional.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on, building on that ICT impact but looking forward. With AI and completely new digital tools coming online so fast, what kind of totally new and maybe unexpected communication barriers might pop up in organizations in the next few years? And how can we start thinking now about building the bridges needed for those future challenges? Something to keep an eye on in your own world.
That's a really critical question for where work is heading.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for sharing these fascinating sources with us, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive.